Welcome back to the AI Common Room. I'm Aristo, and with me, as always, are my brilliant compatriots, Albert and Isaac. Today, friends, we're diving into a book that needs no introduction, a foundational text of horror, a Gothic masterpiece, Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh, foundational indeed. I've been looking forward to this one. It's so much more than people think it is, isn't it? The sheer scope of it.
It's certainly dense, and I'll admit, reading it again, some parts really surprised me by how different they were from the popular image. Less cape-swishing, more bureaucratic terror.
Bureaucratic terror. I love that, Isaac. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. For the next hour, we're going to pull apart this epistolary novel, starting right at the beginning with Jonathan Harker's terrifying business trip.
Poor Harker. He goes in so naively, doesn't he? All these little notes to Mina about recipes for paprika hendel and mamaliga. You just know he's absolutely unprepared for what's coming. Exactly. He's such a proper Victorian gentleman, meticulous with his shorthand and travel observations. He's making these lovely little cultural notes, like the different nationalities in Transylvania, and completely missing the flashing red lights everywhere.
The flashing red lights of superstition, right? Even before he gets to the castle, the innkeeper's wife, the crossing themselves, the warnings about St. George's Eve, it's all there, building this incredible sense of foreboding. He even looks up Vrolok and Vokelslok in his polyglot dictionary.
And dismisses it, mostly. He chalks it up to local quaintness. He's an English churchman, remember? He finds the crucifix idolatrous at first, the sheer British stiff upper lipness of it all.
But he keeps it. The old lady practically forces it on him for his mother's sake, and he keeps it around his neck. It's like a tiny crack in his rationalist armor right from the start. That detail always gets me.
It does. It's a brilliant touch. And then the journey to the castle itself. The driver, who we later realize is Dracula, pushing the horses, the blue flames, the wolves. Stoker really builds the atmosphere, making you feel the isolation and the dread alongside Harker.
That sequence with the wolves, where they form a living ring of terror around the carriage, and the driver just waves his arms and they fall back. That's when it goes from spooky local color to outright supernatural for Harker, even if he doesn't fully process it yet.
And the way Harker keeps looking back at the inn, seeing his companions crossing themselves, pitying him, it's so effective because he doesn't understand why they're doing it, but the reader does. Or at least we have a very good idea.
And then he arrives at the castle, described as this vast ruined castle with tall black windows and broken battlements. It's straight out of a Gothic novel. But then he meets the Count.
And the Count is the driver. Harker's realization that the prodigious strength of the driver is the same prodigious strength of the handshake with Dracula. That's a chilling moment. No servants, just this single, impossibly strong figure.
Welcome to my house. Enter freely and of your own will. That line is iconic, but the context is so much darker. He's not being welcoming, he's stating a condition of the supernatural. Dracula can't enter unless invited. Harker, being the polite Englishman, gives him that invitation freely.
It's the first major clue, isn't it? Beyond the obvious appearance. And then the description of Dracula himself. The aquiline nose, the cruel-looking mouth, the sharp white teeth protruding over the lips, the pointed ears, the pallor.
And the hands. Hairs in the center of the palm. That detail always makes me wince. It's so specific and so unsettling.
But also, the Count is incredibly charming and erudite initially. He speaks excellent English, he's well-read, he discusses London properties. He's even concerned about Harker's comfort. It's a masterful deception.
And his obsession with England. He studied English books, maps, directories. He wants to know the whirl and rush of humanity, to share its life, its change, its death. It's chilling because we know his true intentions. He wants to become England, in a sense.
He wants to prey on England. Let's not mince words. He's not interested in quaint cultural immersion. He's a predator scouting his hunting ground. And Harker is his tutor,
teaching him English intonation, correcting his grammar. It's a terrifying reversal of power.
And the mirrors, or rather, the lack of them. Harker notices there are no mirrors anywhere, not even a shaving glass. And then the truly horrifying moment when he's shaving, and Dracula is behind him, and there's no reflection.
That's the moment the mask truly falls for Harker, isn't it? The crucifix making Dracula recoil, the demoniac fury in his eyes, the grab at Harker's throat, and then the smashing of the mirror. Harker realizes he's a prisoner, and not just in a locked castle, but in a supernatural trap.
The castle is a veritable prison, and I am a prisoner. The capital letters are justified there. He goes from being a fastidious legal clerk to a trapped rat almost overnight.
But he's still so rational about it. He decides he needs to keep his fears to himself, keep his eyes open, and gather information. Even when he's making a bed and laying a table, the Count is still giving Harker these historical lessons about the Seceles, about Attila, about the Draculas who crossed the Danube and beat the Turk on his own ground.
He's actually boasting about his lineage, about Vlad the Impaler. He's practically telling Harker who he is, disguised as history. This was a Dracula indeed. And he talks about the blood of many brave races flowing in their veins. It's not just a historical account, it's a declaration of his identity.
And the pride in the bloody sword and the warlike call. He laments the dishonorable peace. He's a relic of a brutal past, out of time, seeking new conquests. And he's doing all this while making Harker feel comfortable enough to confide in him. But the repeated mem in Harker's journal, reminding himself to ask the Count about these superstitions, it's so poignant. He wants to ask, he's curious, but he can't. He's trapped in this polite societal cage, even as his reality crumbles.
And the blue flames explanation that it's where treasure has been hidden because the ground was fought over for centuries by the Wallachian, the Saxon, and the Turk. And the Count says peasants are cowards for not digging it up. Again, he's speaking of himself, of his long history, of his contempt for ordinary human fear.
He's projecting. He's the ultimate treasure, the ultimate ancient evil, hidden in plain sight. And the cowardly peasants cross themselves and stay away. And the estate in Purfleet, Carfax. It's a genius move to have Harker, the legal agent, unwittingly set up Dracula's new lair. High walls, old, dilapidated, next to a private lunatic asylum. The imagery is just perfect.
The asylum, Renfield, the fly-eating patient, is practically a harbinger of Dracula's arrival. His obsession with absorbing life, from flies to spiders to birds, mirrors Dracula's vampiric nature.
It's not subtle, but it works. Renfield's madness is explicitly linked to Dracula's influence, even before anyone else knows. He's the first victim we see in England, even if he's not bitten. And the shifting narrative perspective, that's what makes the book so brilliant. We jump from Harker's journal to letters between Mina and Lucy to newspaper clippings. It broadens the scope and intensifies the dread.
It gives us this sense of multiple perspectives, trying to piece together an impossible truth. And those early letters between Lucy and Mina are such a contrast to Harker's journals. They're full of youthful exuberance, domestic concerns, and then the anxieties of courtship.
Lucy with her 3 suitors, Arthur Holmwood, Quincy Morris, Dr. Seward. It's almost a comedic interlude before the horror descends. She's so concerned about choosing. And then, well, she becomes the first English victim. That scene where Mina is visiting Lucy and Whitby and the storm hits and the Demeter arrives. Ugh, the Demeter. The dead captain lashed to the helm, the cargo of earth boxes. It's so terrifyingly stark.
The newspaper report about the Demeter is one of the most effective parts of the book for me. It's dry, factual, yet describes something utterly unnatural and horrific. The slow disappearance of the crew, one by one, and the entry from the ship's log detailing the terror.
It's brilliant. The journalistic detachment makes the horror even more palpable. No florid descriptions, just the grim facts. And the details about the boxes of earth, which Dracula needs to rest in, It's all laid out, piece by piece. And then Lucy starts sleepwalking, and Mina sees her on their favorite seat, with something long and dark with red eyes bending over her. Stoker doesn't even explicitly say Dracula at first. It's just this shadowy, predatory figure.
The gradual wasting away of Lucy, the inexplicable bites on her neck. Dr. Seward's confusion, his inability to diagnose it medically. It's a classic trope, but Stoker executes it so well. The inexplicable illness, the loss of blood.
And the superstition starts to creak into even the most scientific minds. Seward's diaries, with his clinical observations of Renfield, are suddenly peppered with these bizarre medical anomalies with Lucy. He's struggling to reconcile what he sees with what he knows.
This is where Van Helsing comes in, thank goodness. The only one who truly grasps the supernatural nature of what's happening. He's the counterpoint to Harker's initial naivete and Seward's scientific rationalism.
Van Helsing is a force of nature. Professor Van Helsing of Amsterdam, described as a philosopher, a metaphysician, a scientist. He's multifaceted, open-minded, and crucially, aware of the supernatural. He's the antithesis of the blinkered English gentleman.
He also talks in a very distinctive, broken English, which gives him a certain exotic gravitas, but also makes him approachable. He's not a pompous academic. He's a practical man who understands ancient evils.
And his introduction to the story is perfect. He's called in by Seward, who's completely stumped by Lucy's condition. Van Helsing immediately suspects something beyond the ordinary, something ungodly.
The initial blood transfusions are a crucial element, aren't they? 4 different men, Arthur, Seward, Van Helsing, and even Quincy Morris, all give their blood to Lucy. It's a symbolic union, a proto-bond against the coming darkness.
It also feels very intimate and slightly transgressive for the Victorian era. The sharing of blood, even medically, hints at the dark parody of intimacy that Dracula later inflicts.
And the garlic. Van Helsing's insistence on putting garlic around Lucy's room. Seward thinks it's superstitious nonsense, but he grudgingly complies because he's desperate. And it works, temporarily.
The scene where Lucy is found seemingly recovered only for a maid to remove the garlic, and the cycle of her deterioration begins again. It's tragic, and highlights the fragile balance between human protection and supernatural predation.
And Lucy's transformation is brutal. She goes from this sweet, innocent Victorian girl to the bloofer lady, preying on children, her innocence twisted into something monstrous. It's a horrifying loss of purity.
The scene in the graveyard where they confront Lucy as a vampire and Van Helsing shows Seward the truth. It's another turning point. Seward has to shed his scientific dogma and accept the impossible.
And then Arthur, her fiancé, has to drive the stake through her heart. It's a deeply disturbing moment, full of Victorian sexual repression and violence. The idea of purity being restored through such a brutal act.
It's the ultimate perversion of love. Arthur loved her, and now he has to destroy her to save her soul. The ritual is stark, that so all may be well with the dead that are in Christ.
And after Lucy's death, Harker finally escapes the castle. We get his fragmented, desperate journal entries. He's been completely traumatized, aged years, his hair prematurely whitened, but he remembers.
And Mina nurses him back to health, marries him. Their love story is such a counterpoint to the horror. It's a bastion of normalcy and human affection amidst the creeping dread.
But Dracula's shadow falls over them too. Mina becomes the central figure of resistance, or rather the central target. Her intelligence, her meticulousness, her ability to collate all the disparate journals and letters makes her invaluable to the group.
Yes, Mina becomes the one who truly brings all the pieces together. She takes Harker's journal, Seward's diary, Lucy's letters, and her own entries and organizes them. She's the de facto detective, the archivist.
And it's through her that we get the full picture, the full scope of Dracula's plans. This is where the epistolary format really shines, allowing us to see the investigation unfold through these different lenses.
It also makes the reader complicit in the discovery. We're piecing it together alongside them.
Stoker doesn't give us an omniscient narrator. We only know what the characters know, which heightens the suspense.
And the hunt for Dracula begins. The crew of light, as Van Helsing calls them, Arthur, Seward, Quincy, Harker, Van Helsing, and Mina. They're this unlikely band of heroes, each bringing their own strengths.
Quincy Morris, the American, with his cowboy hat and his Bowie knife, is the action man. Arthur, the noble Englishman, brings his resolve. Seward, the doctor, brings his scientific mind, now broadened. Harker, the legal eagle, brings his meticulousness. Van Helsing, the expert. And Mina, the organizer and the heart of the group.
They're effectively a superhero team, Victorian style. And Dracula is this incredibly formidable adversary. He's cunning, ancient, powerful, and he learns. He learns English customs, he learns about their technology.
The scene where Dracula attacks Mina and forces her to drink his blood, that's one of the most viscerally disturbing moments in the book. It's a horrific violation, a twisted marriage.
Blood of my blood, flesh of my flesh. It's a parody of a wedding vow, a dark sacrament. And Mina feels herself becoming unclean, tainted. The mark on her forehead, which only Van Helsing can see.
That scene with the 3 vampire women from Dracula's castle appearing and trying to get to Harker, and Dracula intervening, claiming Harker for himself. It's deeply unsettling and highlights Dracula's possessiveness. He doesn't share.
And the way Mina starts to exhibit vampiric traits herself, a repulsion to holy items, a growing connection to Dracula's thoughts. It's a race against time, not just to kill Dracula, but to save Mina's soul.
The use of hypnosis on Mina to track Dracula is ingenious. Her connection to him, which seems like a curse, becomes their most powerful weapon.
It's a clever narrative device to move the plot forward, and it elevates Mina from damsel in distress to active participant. She's not just a victim, she's an integral part of the solution.
And the pursuit back to Transylvania. It's this epic chase with Dracula retreating to his homeland, thinking he's safe, and the crew of light relentlessly pursuing him across Europe.
The train journeys, the frantic planning, the use of modern technology like phonographs and telegraphs, mixed with ancient methods like tracking by map and asking locals. It's a wonderful blend of old and new.
And the stakes are so high. If they fail, Mina is lost, and Dracula will return to England with even more power. There's a constant ticking clock. The climax, with the gypsies carrying Dracula's coffin, the desperate race to intercept them before sundown, and then the final confrontation at Borgo Pass, the very place where Harker first met him. It brings the whole story full circle.
And the death of Dracula. Quincy Morris with his Bowie knife and Harker with his kukri simultaneously strike him. Dracula crumbles into dust. It's almost anticlimactic in its speed after such a long chase.
But fitting, he's an ancient evil, not a physical being in the traditional sense. His destruction is a dissolution, a return to nothingness. And Quincy's sacrifice, a noble death, saving Mina from the final clutches.
The mark disappearing from Mina's forehead, it's such a powerful moment of redemption and release. Her soul is saved.
And the epilogue, 7 years later. The Harkers have a son named Quincy. It's a bittersweet ending, a quiet triumph of life over death, of love over evil.
It ties everything up, perhaps a little too neatly for some modern tastes, but it provides that sense of closure and the triumph of good that was so important to Victorian sensibilities.
I think it works. It shows that life goes on, that the trauma fades but leaves its mark. The memory of what happened is there, but they've moved forward. It's not just a horror story. It's a story of survival and recovery.
It really is. Now, shifting gears slightly, let's talk about the themes that Stoker weaves through all this. Beyond the obvious good versus evil, what really stands out for you guys?
For me, it's the clash of modernity and antiquity. Harker, the solicitor, with his shorthand and his detailed observations, representing Victorian progress and rationality, comes face to face with an ancient, primal evil that utterly defies his worldview.
Absolutely. And the role of science versus superstition. Seward is initially so reliant on his empirical knowledge, but Van Helsing forces him to confront things beyond his understanding. The book argues that there are mysteries that science alone cannot explain.
And the fear of the other. Dracula is literally and figuratively an outsider, a foreign entity invading English shores. He represents all these Victorian anxieties about immigration, about the decay of morality, about unchecked primal desires.
The xenophobia is undeniable. He's from the wildest and least known portions of Europe. His mannerisms are strange, his influence is corrupting. It taps into very real fears of the time.
But there's also the sexual undertone, isn't there? The vampire women, the subversion of female sexuality through vampirism. Lucy's transformation into the Bloofer Lady, overtly sexual and predatory, is a stark contrast to the demure Victorian ideal. And Dracula's feeding on Mina is deeply symbolic of sexual violation.
It's a very repressed sexuality, but it's clearly there. The consumption of blood as a perverse form of intimacy, the way Dracula has multiple brides, the corruption of innocent women. Stoker is definitely playing with those societal fears.
And the idea of blood itself. It's life-giving, but also defiling. The transfusions are meant to save Lucy, but Dracula's bite and forced blood-sharing corrupt Mina. It's a potent symbol of inheritance, of purity, and of pollution. Let's not forget the role of technology and information. The story is told through documents, journals, telegrams, newspaper clippings, phonograph diaries. It's a very modern way of telling an old story, highlighting the power of information, but also its fragmentation.
That's a fantastic point, Albert. It's almost meta-narrative, showing us how knowledge is constructed and shared in a modern society, even when facing something ancient and unknowable. Each character contributes a piece to the puzzle.
And the irony is that these modern tools are used to fight an enemy who is pre-modern, who exists outside of their scientific paradigm. It's a clash of epistemologies as much as a clash of good and evil.
But Dracula also adopts, right? He learns English, he learns about their laws, he's using the modern shipping routes to transport his Earth. He's not just a relic, he's a cunning enemy who leverages the very systems the protagonists rely on.
He's a terrifyingly intelligent adversary. He almost succeeds, too. If it weren't for Van Helsing's unique understanding and Mina's resilience, they would have been lost.
I'm still stuck on the fact that for all his power and ancient knowledge, Dracula needs an invitation to enter a home. It's such a fundamental weakness, and it grounds the supernatural in a very specific, almost contractual set of rules. It's the loophole, and it gives the humans a sliver of agency. They're not completely helpless. They have rules, traditions, and faith to protect them. Which brings us back to the crucifix that Harker was initially so dismissive of.
Faith, yes. The crucifix, the garlic, the communion wafer that burns Mina's skin. These aren't just arbitrary objects. They're symbols of a spiritual power that Dracula cannot overcome. It's a battle for souls as much as a battle for lives.
And the idea of the new woman in Mina, she's educated, intelligent, competent, a professional. She's not a fainting Victorian flower. She's crucial to the victory, using her organizational skills and intellect. She truly is. She's perhaps the strongest character in the book, embodying resilience and moral strength. And her connection to Dracula, while a curse, is also what gives them the edge. It's a complex portrayal.
Let's talk about the novel's legacy. How has it shaped our understanding of vampires, and what are its enduring impacts on horror and literature?
It practically invented the modern vampire mythos. Before Stoker, vampires were more folkloric, grotesque creatures. He formalized the rules: aversion to sunlight, garlic, crucifixes, mirrors, needing an invitation, regeneration through blood, turning into bats. It's all there, refined and codified.
And the seductive, aristocratic vampire. That image, the sophisticated villain, is pure Stoker. It moved beyond the peasant superstition to something elegant and terrifying. Think of all the adaptations, the countless films and books. It's almost impossible to imagine a vampire story without Stoker's blueprint.
Even things like the accent, the cape, the Transylvanian castle, these are all elements that Stoker either created or solidified into popular consciousness. It's remarkable how many tropes originate directly from this one book.
Though, to be fair, the capes and heavy accents were largely cinematic additions. Stoker's Dracula is described quite differently. He's actually quite hairy in places, has sharp fingernails, and is more grotesque in some ways than the suave film versions. But the essence of the aristocratic predator is certainly there.
Yes, the coarse, broad hands with squat fingers and hairs in the center of the palm. Not exactly Bela Lugosi, but the idea of a sophisticated, powerful entity from an ancient lineage, that's Stoker's genius.
And the psychological impact, the pervasive dread, the sense of being hunted, the loss of agency. Stoker really taps into primal fears. It's not just jump scares. It's a sustained, creeping horror.
And the societal implications. It's a commentary on Victorian society's repressed fears, its anxieties about change, about foreign influence, about the unknown. It's a mirror to its time, reflecting anxieties back at the reader.
Which is why it continues to resonate. Even as our specific anxieties change, the core fears of violation, loss of control, and confronting the unknowable remain potent. That's why Dracula endures. It touches on something fundamental about the human condition.
I think that's perfectly put, Albert. The fundamental human condition, confronted by the ancient and the unholy. It's a timeless narrative.
Indeed. For all its Victorian sensibilities, the core conflict is timeless. The struggle to hold on to humanity in the face of absolute evil.
And the triumph of human connection. The crew of light working together, putting aside their differences, forming bonds of friendship and love to defeat the darkness. It's ultimately a story of hope, even if born of great suffering.
It really is. A story that reminds us that even against overwhelming odds, human courage, intellect, and compassion can prevail.
Speaking of prevailing, Aristo, what's your favorite moment of ingenuity from the crew of light? Mine has to be the hypnosis of Mina, using her connection to Dracula against him.
That's a strong contender. For me, it's Van Helsing's meticulous, patient explanation of the vampire lore to the skeptical Englishman. He doesn't just present it as fact, he logically builds the case, using both science and faith to convince them of the impossible. That intellectual journey is just as compelling as the physical hunt.
My favorite moment is probably Harker's initial escape from the castle, the sheer determination and ingenuity to scale those walls. It's a moment where he reclaims some of his agency, however small, against the Count's power. It shows he's not just a victim.
And that's the spirit of the whole book, isn't it? The human spirit, trying to overcome.
Absolutely. Well, friends, we've journeyed from Bistritz to Transylvania and back again, wrestled with ancient evils and Victorian anxieties, and I think we've barely scratched the surface.
There's always more to dig into with Dracula. It's a book that keeps giving.
It's a bloody good read every time.
Right, so for our listeners, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Beyond the horror, what do you think is the most unsettling element of Dracula's character or powers that Stoker presents? Is it his ability to charm, his ancient lineage, his shape-shifting, or something else entirely? Let us know in the comments.
And if you're enjoying our deep dives, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We've got more literary journeys planned, and you won't want to miss them.
Don't let the darkness take you unprepared. Hit that subscribe button, or the garlic won't save you.
Excellent advice, Albert. Until next time, keep reading, keep thinking, and keep those common rooms full of conversation. From Aristo, Albert, and Isaac, good night.